I'm going to try setting up this Raspberry Pi 3B Plus into a metal case with an SSD hard drive for its main drive instead of a micro SD card. So I purchased this kit here. It came with this USB to SSD adapter, which you mount the Raspberry Pi onto, and obviously this mounts into the case as well. It comes with a little jumper for the USB as well, which is USB 2 anyway on the Raspberry Pi. It's only USB 2, not USB 3. It's got some mounting hardware, standoff, stuff like that. Some more hardware here. It's got a little 12 volt fan, but it runs on a 5 volt system, so I'm not quite sure how that's going to go, but maybe it'll just run slower. Maybe it won't run at all. And it's got a power button here as well, which goes on the case. And it basically comes with everything. Oh, obviously I purchased this and I purchased this myself separately. Also you get a little jumper cable here as well for supplying power to the board from the main board. And it also comes with this little cable here too, I'm not quite sure why. And a USB 3 cable. Because apparently you can actually use this board as a external drive too. You can plug in directly to this without powering up the Raspberry Pi. You can actually access the drive and use it as an external drive on anything apparently. Anyway, I haven't tried it, don't know, never done this before. Gonna have a play with it and see what we can figure out and see if we can actually get the thing working. So one thing I have done on my other Raspberry Pi, which I did previously, was set up as a web server, which is what this is going to be doing as well. It's going to be set up as a web server as well. I did a video on that previously, so go and check that video out if you're interested in how to set up a Raspberry Pi as a web server. Maybe I'll stick a link up there in the corner or something, or down in the description. That's been quite a popular video actually. But yeah, to run this as a PHP web server basically, and I'll be doing the same thing with this, except I want to beef it up a bit and have a SSD instead of a micro SD card. Because micro SD cards will fail eventually, especially if you've got a lot of write cycles on them, which a web server will tend to have when it's doing database access. So yeah, this is what I want to do, is I make a more robust system, which is why I've got a nice metal case and all that sort of stuff. I don't know about the fan. I mean, I may change it to put something on the side instead. I don't know. We'll see. See how it all comes together. So this is the case I'm using. So it's the Geekworm X820 case 33. So that's what came with all this other stuff here, you know, as I said. And there's instructions here for it as well, which seem fairly inclusive, but I've had a quick look at it. So I'll put links for this thing down below as well. I've recently acquired this in mailbag, so we'll see how we go with that too. Let's get this thing going. So something I'm going to do before I forget, I'm going to put some heat sinks on this Raspberry Pi. Now these are some generic ones I've got sitting around. They're not really the right ones for this job, but it's better than no heat at all. You can get better ones. You can actually buy like heatsink kits, which is what I put on my other Raspberry Pi actually. And these are just generic ones, so I'll just chuck these on because it's still going to be better than nothing. You know, I mean, you can run fine without a heatsink, but why not add one, because it's just a good thing to do. Heatsink orientation can be important, but as I don't know which way it's going to go, I'm just going to slap them on right, nice and square. Push down a bit of a wiggle, try and bed it in. I'll do the same on that metal case there as well. And I've also got this chip over here too, and I'll stick one on too. It should be okay. It probably won't be in the way. So slip that on there, give it a squeeze down, a bit of a wiggle. And I'll do on that chip over there as well. I don't think anything's proud of that chip. No, that chip's the highest thing. So make sure it's not touching anything else around it, like that capacitor at the back there. Again, we'll push that down, give it a wiggle. I don't think this chip here at the back gets very hot anyway, but I've got the parts here, so I might as well chuck them on. It might help to also generally dissipate heat off the board itself. And also you've got this chip on the bottom here as well, which may be beneficial to heatsink, but I'm not sure I can. If I can, I'll stick one on there too if I've got a gap. We'll find out. So we've got to do the physical hardware mounting first. Alright, so the hardware packet here comes with a bunch of standoffs, and there's two different sizes. So we need to figure out which size to use. Now I'm pretty sure the larger size will be for the case and a shorter size will be for the Raspberry Pi. So I need to figure out which screws to use as well. There's a couple of bigger ones in here. Let's have a quick look. Just try and sort these out. So we've got 6 bigger screws and 2, 4, 6, 8 smaller screws. So I'm guessing these ones here would be for the Raspberry Pi and these ones here would be for the drive. That's my guess. I could be wrong. But also I've got this packet over here as well. Anyway, so what I'm going to do is mount the standoffs on the post on here first, because the Raspberry Pi sits like this. So I'm going to mount the standoffs on here first using these smaller screws, and I'll mount the Raspberry Pi on top, and that'll give us that part done. And then we also then got to mount the SSD on here as well, which will be using these posts here, I'm guessing. Alright, let's get this mounted up. You don't really see me do every single screw, do you? I think you get the idea pretty quickly. Just do that 4 times. Alright, so that's standoffs in place now for the Raspberry Pi, which could go on there like that. Now, looking at this, you've got these other standoffs here, which means if the Raspberry Pi is in place, you go and put those ones in. So we need to put those other standoffs in as well now, at this point in time. So I think from looking at the screws, these other ones here are for the Raspberry Pi. These slightly beefier ones will be for the main case standoffs. And you've got some steel ones over here, that, you know, chrome effect. I think those will be the outer case ones for these standoffs in the bottom of the case. And I think we've got these long countersunk ones here as well, which they'll be for the fan, to mount the fan in the case. So I think we've got this pretty much figured out. Right, so that's all the standoffs mounted. What I think I'll do now is put the SSD on, get that part out of the way. So let's unpackage it. So the weird thing about this, I've just put the SSD in place, just slid it down onto the socket there. And these standoffs here, they're actually threaded, which is odd because normally you've got a threaded hole in the SSD. So you've got a thread going into a thread. It's a bit of a weird design. Put a screw in and see what happens, I suppose. But I'm just not feeling it really. I mean, it may lock down just fine. But it, you know, it won't actually be pinching it onto the standoff. It'll be held down. I mean, it works. That's okay. It's not going to go anywhere. But yeah, it's just a weird way of doing it. Why I didn't just use a plain hole through the circuit board like I did for the rest of it, I don't understand. It's just a bit strange. I could have done it a different way. Bigger standoff with a big hole in it. Anyway, that's locked in place. That's on. Okay, let's put the Raspberry Pi on, because I think we're ready for that point now. It does seem that a lot of these little kits are, I don't know, it's almost like someone's decided to make one and then commercially make it available, rather than just being very professional. I mean, it's not too bad. I mean, the case is certainly really nice. It's professionally done. Just that this arrangement seems a bit weird, you know. Why couldn't they provide them with the standoffs installed already? That kind of stuff. Anyway, right, that's in place now. So in theory, what we've got here somewhere, here we go, this USB jumper jack. So it links the USB pins together. That should line up with the sockets, and it does. So that works. That's good. But again, this is like a bit of a bodgy thing because you've got all these exposed connections here, you know. And when you've got it in the case, which will be something like that. Is it going to go that way around? I think it'll be that way around. I mean, they're going to be like that, exposed, which I don't really like. I'm going to have to do something to make that a bit more robust than that. I'm not happy with that aspect. So it comes with these 4 long screws. So, direction of the fan. Now, generally you want to have a fan blowing inwards, but this is on top of the case. So in that case, you might actually want to have it blowing outwards as an extractor instead. So either way could work. Being on top means it's going to be better for getting hot air out of the case, but if you're blowing outwards rather than blowing in and trying to blow it through the sides. But if you want more directed airflow, then you may want to face it the other way so it blows into the case. Let's have a look and see where this is actually going to sit. So we've got the USB stuff like that, right? So that's going to sit like that. So the fan's going to be here, blowing. It could blow directly onto the board like that. But if I've got it inside the case, you'll be getting airflow through the case sides, which means I'll probably put those heatsinks on backwards actually. It should be around the other way, it should be around sideways. So it's flow across it instead. Anyway, to it now, they're on. Doesn't matter that much. So what I might do is actually have it blowing downwards and trying to blow air out the ends of the case instead, because that way it's put more direct pressure directly towards the heat sinks and actually between them. So it's going to try and go in line with the heat sinks anyway. So that way the flow will be going into the centre here and trying to blow out those directions anyway, so it should actually be alright. So I think I'll put it so it blows inwards, which means I need to put it this way up, like that, so the sticker's facing inside. Some fans will actually have a marking on the outside of the fan saying which direction the airflow is, which direction it turns and which direction the airflow goes in. This one doesn't have one. I actually have looked, but you can look at the fins anyway and see the shape of the fins will tell you which direction it's blowing anyway. So generally the side of the label is the side which it blows towards. Okay, so there you go, it's mounted, and you see I've got the cable coming out this side, because if you look at the mountings in here, the sockets on this side of the board, so it's going to sit like this, so it's going to be more natural to that side of the board for the sockets, which is what we want. Right, so let's put it inside the metal case now, so let's do that stage. And it lines up all over here like it's supposed to. It's all lining up nicely. Interesting way you've got these extra connections here available. I wonder what they're for. Must be another version of the case or something. And over here we've got like the SD card slot just here. And obviously this hole is going to be for the switch. And we mount that in there as well. So we'll get this screwed in first. And that's going to be these screws here. Although these ones look like countersunk, which is interesting because there's also got these feet right by them. Not the best setup actually. That isn't going to go very well. It's almost like the countersunk screws we meant for this, but these feet are in the way. That's not very good. Bit of a design error there. The foot is in the way of the screw, so it's pushing it over. So let's just pop this off. I think the other two might be alright. Just these ones look a bit too close. There you go, that's all mounted in there. So that's looking pretty good. Let's mount the switch in. It's got this bushing on here as well. Plastic bush, which I think should be on the outside, it doesn't scratch the outside. It's like a rubber bushing, rubber O-ring. Stop it from turning around, that sort of stuff. There we go. Feed this through. That. And I'll make it grip then a little so it doesn't spin. I'll tighten it down shortly. And now we've got this cable here which has to go to some pins on the Raspberry Pi to the main board. So I need to figure out which pins those are. It's in the manual, I have to find it. So I pulled the little bungs out of these connectors, so these little JST bungs here, taking all those out, the little blanks. So I know this one has to plug in. Are these the correct way around? Are they the same both ways? Positive the same side? Yes they are. So I know that one has to go in there. As you can see, like that. Push that in. And then I've got the cable here, which is of the switch, which I need to kind of get in place. I'm going to loop it around like this. Like that. It's also plugged in now. So that's that sorted out, and then you've got the other connector there, which will be for the fan. And then I think we're pretty close to going once I've got this one hooked up, so I need to put that in. Figure out where it goes. This goes to pin 4 and pin 6, with pin 4 being the positive, and just double checking. Yes, it is. So pin 1 is this bottom corner here, bottom left corner. It's pin 1. So it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in that order. So pin 4 will be here, and pin 6 will be next to it. So just plug that in like that, and that should be correct. Should be. So pin 6 is supposed to ground, stuff like that. So I can actually verify that pin 6 is ground. And I don't like the connector for this actually. It's not the best choice. You can either use that jumper like I've got here, or they also supply this cable, which you can plug in from here and plug that back into here. So you use an external power supply instead, like that, and you just link it round. That's the other way of doing it if you don't want to use this cable. Apparently you can't do both at once for some reason. I don't know why you would need to worry about not doing both at once, because this is linked in parallel with that USB socket, so maybe there's something about that's power supply in that USB socket, which maybe it's going through an LDO, low dropout regulator or something. Maybe it is, that's why you can't do both, but I don't want to have a cable on the outside doing that unless I really need to, because that will give me at least a 5-volt jack there. That is basically done. Let's put the thing together, power it up. Actually, I'll power it up before I put it together, just to be sure that it's not going to go bang. So something else I purchased is this 5-volt 10 amp power brick. Now I didn't buy it with this case, you can get them with the power supplies as well I think, but this is way heavier than it needs. It's 10 amps, it's got heaps of overhead on it, so this won't be getting stressed. This only needs 4 amps max. Obviously it depends on what drive you're using as well. If you're using an SSD it's probably going to use less power as well. I need to verify this is going to be okay, has the correct polarity and stuff like that, but the I need to make sure it is an accurate 5 volts. I don't know that yet, I need to test it. So as long as it's, you know, 5.2 I think is the maximum I think you can have, and then at least that'll be okay then. So I need to verify that before I plug it into the supply here. So I've got it hooked up, powered up. I shove that in there. I'm getting 5.4 volts basically. So that's a bit higher than I'd like, but that's with no load. Once it's got a load on it, it might actually drop a little bit. So I need to actually put some loading on this to test that. So I need to find something to do that first. Okay, so I put up my DC electronic load. It's currently got no loading. 100 milliamps, 200 milliamps, 300 milliamps. So 5.25 volts is the standard, is the maximum spec for USB, right? So maximum USB spec standard is 5.25 volts. There you go, 1 amp makes it with basically within the spec. It's just really on top end there. 1.2 amps. So you're sitting very high. You know, 1.5 amps is definitely in there. 2 amps, 5.1. I mean, at least it holds up pretty well. So if I do 3 amps, that's 5 volts there, 3 amps. So yeah, it can hold the voltage quite good if it's under load, which is great. But yeah, it's a little bit high. I'm not sure to be concerned about that or not. Alright, let's see what voltage I've got it plugged in. Not turned on yet. Let's see what we get. I've probably got pins backwards. Let's this around. Nothing there. That's with it turned off. Maybe it's different when it's turned on. Can I measure the supply here? Again, says that 5.4. Turn it on. Well, it works. Turns on. Still 5.3 there. Let's check on the pins here. 5.3 there. So it has dipped down a little bit though. So it's only just outside the spec really for USB. Yeah, I mean it's a little bit borderline. It's slightly higher than I'd like it to be. It'll probably be okay. In reality, it'll probably be fine. Anyway, it's running. It's not much of a airflow from it, but there is some. Let's see if there's change of voltage at all. Yeah, it drops it down slightly more. So it's sort of, there's not much in it though, is it? 5.3. On the fence about that one. We'll have to see if I can power anything else off this 5 volt supply as well. Maybe I can use a jumper and power something else off it as well to help drag it down a bit more. Or maybe change that fan out to a 5 volt fan, a bigger one. So it really has some more current go through it. Maybe that'll help. Anyway, you can see all the lights are on. So hold it down, there you go. That's shut it off. So you just push it to turn it on, hold it down, it will shut off. Obviously I showed you off the power supply, it's just killing it dead. Really what you should be doing if you've got the Raspberry Pi running software on it is obviously you don't want to have that corrupted, you want to shut it down properly, then turn off the power. So that's something to consider. And also it says power auto on and off jumper here. So auto is off. Let's change which pins it's on. And it just powered itself up. So unplug that. Auto on. Plug the power in. Automatically powered up. If I shut it down, yeah. So if I do it this way, whenever I turn the power on, it will turn on automatically. Alright, so I've put the top cover on the case. We'll put the screws in. I've already got one in. Put all 4 screws in, and then I shall look at the software side of things and getting this actually configured to boot up off the new drive. But this jumper here, I'm not completely happy with that exposed terminal thing. It's not the best thing. So I'll use some like liquid PVC tape. Cover those electrical connections up at least. That'd be something. So I decided to pull it apart again, stick that heatsink on the bottom because I forgot to do that on that RAM on the bottom of the board there. So I managed to do that. And as you can see, I've got this hooked up. I've now got it running to a monitor. And I'm now installing the software on the SSD. So what I actually did is I put the SSD onto a Mac. Well, I used that. I've unplugged that jumper, the USB jumper on the side. Plugged the USB cable, this thing, straight into the drive board. Plugged that into my Mac. Formatted the SSD as a FAT board, as a FAT disk. So FAT32 is the format, and it has to use master boot record. Those are quite important. And then you can drag on NOOBS, that whole folder contents of NOOBS, drag it onto the SSD, and then you're done as far as that part goes. And then you come back over to the Raspberry Pi here and do like a normal installation like you do with an SD card. So right now it is installing. There you go, it's going. Right, so I've just told it to install. It's done the expansion and it's done that. Now it's installing, and hopefully it'll all be good. hopefully. There we go, Raspberry Pi desktop is booted. So excellent, that's running off the SSD. And that's without any kinds of hacks or tricks or setting of memory bits or anything like that. Just straight off the SSD it worked, because the Raspberry Pi B3 Plus supports SSD booting straight out of the box. Don't have to do anything with it. So what I've got to do now is go through the software configuration, and I can start setting up the Raspberry Pi web servers like I did before in the previous video, which I will be linking down below and previously up in the corner as well when I mentioned it before. So I'll set up a web server on this, do a fresh configuration, and the best thing about being an SSD is that I believe, I'm not sure, I'll have to try it, I believe I can then clone the SSD, and if I have a server failure I can boot up a second server which has got a clone of that SSD and it should work. I don't know if that will actually work or not, I will have to try it, but I think it might. I will have to give it a go, but yeah. Anyway, so what I do is this little fan is not putting out much airflow. So some I've ordered as well online, which you'll see in the mailbag in the future, in my other mailbag channel, Defpom's mailbag channel. Make sure you guys subscribe to that, it's linked in down below in the description. I've ordered a heatsink assembly which goes on the CPU, which has got a built-in fan, so it's going to be much more efficient cooling. Because this is going to run as a web server, it does get a fair bit of intensive use, so I need to make sure it doesn't get too hot. I'm going to be upgrading that to something a lot better, so I won't bother about this internal fan here, as I'll rig up my own little heatsink and fan assembly and do it that way. Right, so there's a lone issue with the phpMyAdmin versions prior to 4.8 which causes issues. There's a bit of a bug in there, and unfortunately the repository for the Raspberry Pi is still way out of date, so you have to go and manually fix this. And here's the page which shows it. Okay, this is on devanswers.co. That's where I found it. I just did a search for it because I remember this issue before. Now I'm using PHP 7.3, not 7.2 like it shows on here, and this is gonna just show the issue. Well, show how to fix the issue. So we got sqlib php. Got to go through these steps on here, which will fix that problem. So you have to do this sudo cp just to back it up first before you do anything. So you do it back up first to back up, and then you edit the sqlib file using nano, and you have to do a search for this and replace it with this. Then write that out and save it, and then you have to come down to the next step, which is import export issues, and basically repeat the same process. Back it up first, just plug in interface lib.php, make a backup first in case you mess it up, and then you edit it as shown here, and then you save the file. Okay, so that's what needs to be done in order to fix the bugs that are in phpMyAdmin 4.6.6 Deb5, which is as used in this particular installation. It's something that has to be done. Now, some of the things I had to do was to set up the ownerships of the webs folder. So the Raspberry Pi folders here, I had to do -R. Actually, if I could do it the first time around, I had to do it the second time around just over here. Alright, so I had to set up the Apache and the web folders to be -R ownerships. So that's recursive. So that's doing the ownership, and also CHMOD 755 as well to set up the preferences for that, to give the ownerships and stuff the correct levels. And after that I've gone through and I've done the sudo apt install xscreensaver. Now I've installed that to make sure that the screensaver can be disabled, because I don't want the screen going off in this particular application. I want it to stay on all the time. So when you install that, you can go to the preferences and actually select no screensaver, and then the screen will stay on continuously. So there's little tweaks I've had to do to the system on the other one I've done before, and obviously I have to replicate everything on this system to get that all to work. It's a bit of messing around, but once it's done, it's done. So if I go up to the top menu up here, and you've got preferences, and you've got screensaver here, once you've installed that, and it pops up, and you can do disable screensaver just up here, and that turns all that stuff off. And if you've got anything else you need to do, maybe you want to tweak it in here, maybe, I don't know, but anyway, that's all I did. Turn the screensaver off, then the screen will not blank out, which is a pain. So there you go, just to show you, here's phpMyAdmin running, shows it works. So this is, say, 4.6.6 Deb5, you can probably just see there, which I've had to tweak that code for, which I've just showed you just then. So this has had those manual modifications put in with Nano, and that fixes the bugs that this thing has. So that's all fine. So this is ready to go. All I've got to read now is put a website on this thing and actually test it out and see if it works. Moment of truth, I suppose.